Bonjour, namaste, shalom. Welcome to our conversation with Ms. Manjula Pooja Shroff and Ms. Anurita Rathore Jadeja to discuss the new book, Success Mantras and Musings, published by Vitasta. The book, written by Anurita Jadeja, is based on the journey of Manjula Shroff, starting in Odisha, passing through Delhi, and finally reaching its zenith in Ahmedabad. For those of you who may be interested, right now I'm doing this interview from Delhi. And so reading the book and her talking about Delhi was personal to me. Interestingly, Anurita is also an entrepreneur herself, founding the company Stories and Stories to bring people's ideas and journey to the market in the form of books. One thing that stood out for me when I read about these two amazing women is that they both want to mentor and guide young people. Manjula Shroff shares her experiences and insights via lectures and talks. She's also an alum of IIM Ahmedabad, and I told some of my friends who are on the faculty there, and they said they might join too. Anurita Rathore is visiting faculty for media studies and mass communication. Manjula ji and Amrita ji, welcome and thank you for taking the time to chat with us today. Before we start our conversation, let me remind our live audience that we welcome their questions on live video at any time. People can either type their questions in the chat box or raise their hand using the function in Zoom, and we will let them ask questions. The questions from the audience are not scripted at all, so please be prepared for any questions that come from the audience. But let me start with a few questions. What would be a 30 to 40 second elevator pitch of your book, of this book? Anurita ji, I think you go first, or however you want to do.
Yeah, surely. So, I think this book is a book that can be read by one and all. It's not just, it's written by a woman on the life and journey of another woman, but it is a book that can be read by everyone. It's an inspirational book more than anything. You read this book and you will feel inspired. There are certain things you will relate to. There are little anecdotes here and there which may comfort somebody at some point. At some points, it may make you wonder. So it's basically a book about focus, about discipline, about how these things are able to make you achieve what you want. It is a book on love and relationships, on how strong bonds can make things happen for you and how it can keep you strong.
Manjula ji?
The book, Vishalji, first Vishalji, thank you so much for doing this for us. I know you've just come to Delhi from the US, and at Renuji's request, it's really an honor for me to be talking to you. The book has launched about 3 months ago. So I'm going to say this from what I heard from readers. A friend of mine from Orissa says that it's an ideal book for women between the ages of 20 and 40. She says that anybody who's setting out in the world will find a lot of resonance, will find a lot of empowerment, especially if you're a woman. And in my own conversations that I've been around several cities now, releasing the book, I've found a lot of resonance with men, actually. I've had a principal walk up and said that I'm going to buy 30 books and give it to all my staff. I've seen him say that, in some part of my conversation, he said, I love the fact that you said that if men read the book, they would probably understand how they would be a father to their daughters and possibly get insights into dealing with women in their lives, nieces, sisters, spouses, of course, anybody who's a woman. So I think I'm going to say that.
And I think that's very true, right? Gandhiji famously said that the problems and challenges of women are not just of their own, right? It's both men and women who should be concerned about those challenges. And I'm glad you brought that up. But let me now go into sort of a longer question, which is specifically, what are 2 to 4 things that you would want people to learn from this book? And we'll again do the same order, Anurita ji first and then Manjula ji.
So one is, when you have dreams, how to chase them, how to make them happen, how there will be there will be times when you might sort of get setbacks, but it's all about, the way you look at something and how you go to achieve it. I think that's one of the things that people might get to know. Also, if you are an entrepreneur, if you are somebody who's sitting on a seat which seems like it's an extremely busy place to be, which it could be, but at the same time, if you have time for other things in life, whether it is being a parent, whether it is relating with friends, whether it is travel, so there are these different things that people will be able to understand about a busy person's life. Third, I think a very important aspect is that, when you have been very well loved in your childhood, be it by one parent, both parents, or if you've received love well in your life, it gives you a strength which nothing else in the world can give. So that, and of course, for me, the fourth very important thing is that, when there are relationships, when there are strong bonds, there is always a sense of security that you have, which is able to make you take leaps in life, which is able to make you take risks in life, which otherwise you may or may not be able to. So I think these are things. Plus, sorry, but I'll say one more thing. When a person finishes reading this book, they will feel that they have been able to relate. They may feel this is not just Manjula Pooja Shroff's journey, but they will definitely feel that, okay, this is something I have experienced. So somewhere there is going to be this feeling of bonhomie. There's going to be this feeling where people are going to feel, oh my God, is this her journey? Or is it something that happened with us? Or, oh, we know her already. I mean, this is what we know of her. Plus, she's not been somebody, who's been very, very open about so many things about her life, whether it's her parent, her being a mother, or what her mother of parenting was in her life, or how she took certain decisions early on. So all those things are very different from what one knows of her as an entrepreneur. So there are a lot of things like these that people will be able to relate to. And I think that is where somewhere it wins for all.
What I related to when you talk about the Barsati of Delhi, living in a Barsati in Delhi, and I thought you have to be a Delhi wala to understand the concept of Barsati and sort of what it means to live in a Barsati. I never lived in one personally, but it is so common here in Delhi. And for me, that sort of said, oh, this is wonderful. But Manjula ji?
It's my life. So it's kind of awkward. When somebody gets written about, the very first thing that you confront is, will people think this is pompous? Will people think that, it's about self-worth that you're putting out? That's the first thing that you confront with. And it's been such a beautiful journey, because by now I realize that stories need to be told. And like Anurita ji said, every woman has a story to tell. And in reading, in seeing some parts of my story, they'll say, if she could do it, we can do it. I think that is the biggest takeaway. I'm hoping that people, they've read a lot of stuff about me. They've read all the success part of me. They've seen me grow an enterprise. They've seen how I came into a new city, new state with absolutely no understanding of, say, Gujarati or the state of Gujarat, and over 2 decades build this whole so-called enterprise. Now, when they read about that, they think that, some people are born with a silver spoon. She comes from a good family. They forget, or they're not aware of how challenging life can be. And I think that it is so good that this book talks about a lot of those milestones, a lot of those hurdles that I've had to overcome to be who I am today. So I think that's the best part of it. And hopefully a lot of people will say that, oh, really? She did it, we can do it. And I did it, mind you, at an era 2 decades ago when things were not as easy as they are for women. It's never as easy, but relatively. So that's my first one. I'll just take one other. Motherhood or parenting has been very, very, as an important aspect of my life, but it has shaped me as an individual. I've learned to be a better human being by being a mom. I've learned to be a better professional by being a mom. I've learned to be a much better leader by being a mom. Today, if my organization has a lot of good HR policies, it's because I understood what it takes as a woman to run an enterprise and pay attention to family and a child. So I think that it depends on how, everybody goes through life, everybody has information. How do we distill it? So I've been able to distill at least parenting to make me a much better person and a professional.
So if I ask you, Gandhiji famously said, be the change you want to see. How would you rate yourself then in terms of running the business for women employees? Like, do you think you were able to be the change you would have wanted to see?
I am not only a leader, I am a role model. I strive to be a role model. I try my best never to have dissonance in what I say and do. Thought, words, and actions are completely aligned. You see, because at least me as a leader, I believe that if thoughts, words, and actions are not aligned, it's not easy. People may not say it because they are subordinates. People may not say it, but they will not respect you. And to me, as a role model, I lead by example. I lead from the front. So yes, that's very, very critical to me. I say what I do what I say.
Okay. So in terms of the next question, again, we'll follow the same order. What is your most favorite sentence or paragraph from the book? Could you maybe read it for our audience? Something short?
Yes, but it's like asking, what do you like about your child? So there are so many things, but yes, there are.
I was afraid you were going to say that. I was afraid somebody was going to say that.
Because there is a lot of emotion. When I write, people say that, I write from the heart. It's not just from the head. So every paragraph that has been written has got so much of feeling in it. It's almost as if I was writing my own story. So that's the kind of feeling I put into it. But yes, maybe, there is one from Parenting, the Mother of All Joys. I'll read out very short, just a few lines. And I enjoyed writing the chapter on the parent, the mother. So there is this gift of, under the subhead, gift of reciprocation. In a world that calculates every step and decision, parenting gifts you the joy of understanding and enjoying the act and feeling of reciprocation. There are several parents who hold themselves back, fearing rejection from children, if not at that instant, then perhaps at a later age and stage. The point is in doing whatever it be for them wholeheartedly. It is in being there for your children completely, in responding to them with love, listening to them intently, and
Anurita, can you please unmute yourself?
Yeah, I got muted.
Yeah, you got muted.
Yeah, now you are fine, but it got muted for some reason.
Yeah.
So should I read it again?
Yeah, the last part, please.
There are several parents who hold themselves back, fearing rejection from children, if not at that instant, then perhaps at a later age and stage. The point is in doing whatever it be for them wholeheartedly. It is in being there for your children completely, in responding to them with love, listening to them intently, and showering them with assurances that promise them security. This one, and there's one more, in a chapter called Connected by Choice. If you allow me, I'd like to just read that 3-4 lines as well. Should I?
Yeah, please go ahead, but tell us the page number.
128, page number 128.
Okay.
The subhead is emotional and sensitive, to be or not to be. There are far too many views about being emotional and sensitive, various schools of thought that point out the benefits and drawbacks of being sensitive and emotional as a person. I, for one, see it as a strength to be both. One is able to connect with another person instantly, and it can be the source of lasting relationships. Being emotional can sometimes be construed as a weakness, but that would be in case a person gets overtly carried away by emotions. Where decisions are taken purely on emotions without reliance on data analysis or facts, it could prove to be a hindrance, especially at workplace. Optimization could be the key to more or less everything, including emotions. So there are a lot, but yeah, I thought these are, and it was writing these was interesting because, of course, I would send her questions and she would answer them, and then I would begin to write. So there are a lot of aspects in the book where I have been able to pour out my emotions and thoughts as well. It's just a good thing that it happened to sync, and therefore she did not have to tell me too much कि ये नहीं ठीक है, ये नहीं ठीक है, because it blended well. But yeah, there was a joy in writing this book because somewhere I felt the thoughts were really in sync.
Wonderful. Manjula ji?
आपने बरसाती की जिक्र तो कर दी है, so I'm going to take that forward a little bit. I'm on page 46. I'm going to read this not because it's my favorite para. There are many things in the book which I really like, but because it was a turning point in my life. From high palace walls to a terrace room wasn't entirely mine. Delhi was an eye-opener in every sense. I lived in a barsati in Delhi, which is typically a terrace room accommodation that a family living in a bungalow rents out. From a palace to a barsati sounds quite a mammoth adjustment, but interestingly, it wasn't so for me. I was on top of the world, all eager to set out and make my mark. I'm going to just say bits and parts. Delhi was like a step-by-step guide to independent living for me. Starting off wasn't easy. It involved basic jobs like cleaning the space that I lived in, washing clothes, cooking on a gas stove, sleeping in a terrace room in the bitter winter colds of Delhi, with a second-hand heater for comfort, and commuting by DTC buses besides job hunting. So to give you a little context, I'd never traveled alone. I would always be chaperoned. I never knew anything except the comfort of a private vehicle. I never knew that you could have a bathroom that was not attached. I mean, these are small things. I did not know how to wash clothes. I did not know how to wash utensils. I did not know how to light up a gas stove. I did not know a gas stove existed on the planet. So every little thing was a challenge. Every little thing. And Delhi, even then, Delhi was not a safe place for young people. So Delhi taught me self-confidence for sure, but it also taught me self-preservation and self-reliance. To many ways, Delhi still is very close to my heart, but because it made me who I am today. I think it shaped the leader in me. It provided me opportunities for risk-taking. It provided me opportunities to take initiatives. It provided me opportunities to fight and win.
As I was reading this part of the book, Manjula ji, and I give a lot of credit to Anurita ji for writing it the way you did, because it sort of made it come alive for me. The question I kept asking myself is, when you were doing this washing and cleaning and commuting in the DTC buses and shivering in the cold and Delhi cold, did you in your heart and mind, did you know that you would end up making your mark? I mean, you say eager to set out and make my mark, but it's difficult to sort of think about that when you are dealing with mundane things, right? The water not coming, the DTC buses, the commuting. Help us sort of reconcile the two things. Like,
so
how did you do that?
Fair question, okay? I'll tell you this. Ever since I was little, I used to tell my friends in school, hold on to me, guys, I'm going to become precious. Now, that's something that I always carried with me. But when I was washing those dishes and stuff, I used to be like, why am I not even going back home? Not once. Every day I would probably, and I would howl and cry and make a scene and all of that. But in my heart, I knew I was going to make it. I always knew I was going to make it. And that is what they talk about, using energy the right way. I never doubted that. I never doubted that. Through, this book talks about a lot of my trials. And there are a lot of stuff that the book hasn't referred to, but throughout every trial that I've gone through, I know that there is a light at the end of the tunnel. Nobody can shake that within me.
And I think that hope is important to succeed. I think that dream in your heart, even when you're washing the dishes and commuting in a bus full and shivering in the Delhi cold in a Barsati where, the heater may not be working properly. Yeah. So.
Vishalji, you know the condition of Delhi DTC buses. I used to say, what princess? मैं कर क्या रही हूँ यहाँ पे?
Yeah, that's kind of how I reacted to that paragraph. But we'll come to that in a few minutes. The princess part, we'll come to that in a few minutes. Now, my next question is, the book is classified on the back as a biography. Yet, I get the sense from talking to the two of you that communicating with the two of you that you don't think of it as a biography. So could you explain your thinking on this issue?
Yes, Vishal, the thing is that, a biography would entail having a very detailed description about the different events of a person's life. That is not there in this book. Of course, we've talked about her travels, we've talked about education, we've talked about her childhood, about her handling finance, everything. But the chapters are not in a way, the way you would read in a biography. So these are little thoughts that have made it into, the different thoughts from different areas of life that have been made into different chapters. So you have motherhood somewhere, you've got parenting somewhere, you've got working with women somewhere, you've got entrepreneurship somewhere. It's like that. So you cannot classify it into a biography. And yet it has a lot about her life. It has a lot about challenges that one faces. It has a lot about the journey one has undertaken, about the different experiences that she has had. So all that is there. But it's still, I wouldn't say that it comes under biography, because there are a lot of aspects about her life we haven't even touched upon.
And Manjula ji, do you have any thoughts on this? Do you also not see this as a biography?
No, I don't think so. We never did chronology. We paid a lot of attention to standout incidents in my life, stuff that shaped me, stuff that, created the metal inside me. We paid a lot of attention to that. But I don't think we did it historically, chronologically, date-wise. No. So I think that it's more about musings. I think that's the right word. I think it's a lot more about musings, learnings, growing, all of that, rather than just like a chronicle of events.
Okay. Now, a book like this, where you are the subject and Anurita ji is the writer, requires two people to work closely. And yet, when two people work closely, even if my wife and I were to work closely on something, there are bound to be things where we disagree. So were there things that you both disagreed on? And if yes, how did you sort of resolve that disagreement? Could you give some specific examples?
If I have to say, I mean, during the process of the entire book, it might come as a surprise to you, but there weren't disagreements anywhere. And I'm sure she's going to say that as well. But there were a few things, especially in the last couple of chapters, where we are talking about the entire substance, what life is, spirituality. Though that is probably the only chapter where maybe we went back and forth once or twice. Otherwise, the process was very simple. I would ask her questions, mostly via email, and she would answer those. And I had told her that you must be absolute, do not worry about anything, including the language, though I knew that she is very good at it, but she needn't worry about anything. And then whatever is there I'll form the, it's like the meat is there, I'll put everything around it, and then we present it. But there weren't anything, I don't think there was any place where she disagreed to what I wrote. If there was anything, I think if she told me something, I felt I understood it very well enough to be able to write it. And that is how I did it. So maybe she probably, when she read it, she felt it's coming out straight from her mind.
Well, let's see what she thinks.
Or her keyboard, yeah.
So, G. So, one of the ease of this whole thing was I would write 2 lines and she would expand it, right? Because there were a lot of things that we did on the email. This is COVID period. There were times that she would just send a whole bunch of questions and I would write like a 2-liner, 3-liner, whatever. and she would expand it. Now, when I read those expansions, I never felt discomforted or like, oh, she should have said it like that. So there was a lot of similarity in the way we thought, and I attribute that to the fact that we've had similar backgrounds. You know, she was setting out as a woman professional about the same time as I was. So the woman entrepreneurial chapters, women empowerment chapters were easy. You know, they're pretty much similar. Parenting is something that I hold extremely dear to my heart. She's very, very dedicated as a parent. So that was also similar. Then there were portions of the palace life which she understood because she comes from a Rajput family herself. So, you know, see, this took care of, let's say, the largest part of the pie. Now, since you're asking a detailed question, let me see. Anurita and me are different human beings, right? If I may describe us, I'm more left-brained. She's more right-brained. I mean, she's a creative person. I am a leader, right? I'm an organizer. I lead an enterprise. So I'm far more left-brained and far more action-oriented. So that is what I would say as individuals, predominantly how we differ. And because of my experience in leadership, when I saw that either I was being too action-oriented, I would lift my foot off the gas, let's just say, because there were times I knew she needed her creative space. So having said that, those are the kind of things that we had to adjust and readjust, but largely it was a very smooth ride. Very, very smooth ride.
Okay, so let's get to the next question now. Tell us a little bit about your growing up years, and both of you. And here's why I ask this. When I read the book, you talk about the Surangi Palace for Manjula ji. And I think I think the reader is sort of expected to know a lot more about the Odisha royal family than the average reader knows. And I count myself sort of better informed than the average reader, and I was like totally no knowledge. And Anurita ji, even though I felt there were times in the book when you sort of you came through, but I felt like I know nothing about you even after finishing reading the book. So tell us a little bit about your growing up years, both of you.
So I've always been, you know, I was not a very good student in school, but I was very well loved by my parents. My other two siblings were good rankers. One would come, you know, in the top 3, the other in top 10 all their life. And I think I was only good in subjects like maybe history, English, logic, psychology. I wouldn't, I wouldn't say that maths, science and economics and all of that was my cup of tea. So I had a very protected, a very sheltered, loving childhood where there was space given. I was not made to feel that I'm not doing well or anything like that, but we were given our space. We were encouraged a lot in whatever we wanted to pursue, whether it was art or whether it was playing with something. So that it was there. When it comes to backgrounds, yes, I come from a Rajput family where, you know, like my mother's father, my maternal grandfather was the youngest of the 3 brothers, the Prince of Kutleher, which is in Himachal Pradesh. And my father's father was Maharaj Sahab of Mokampura, a place in Kushalgarh, Rajasthan. So, you know, one had grown up. When I joined journalism at the age of 20, I remember people back home in the place saying that, oh, so you're going to be doing a job. So it was a very big thing, you know, 25 years ago, people in your family, the staff and all getting to know that you're going to be working was a very big thing. And initially, I won't lie, but, you know, even I was thinking of ways to explain that, yes, I had begun work in a newspaper office. So that's how it was. And then it was, I think, just encouragement. You know, my father would read my articles and he would ask me, Babu, have you written every word of this? Oh my God, even this sentence is done by you. So it made me not only was I encouraged, but it made me feel very good. मैं जो कर रही हूँ, that is being appreciated and liked. Wherever, if there was necessary, you know, if my mother felt that something could have been done in this way, there was a way of saying. There was never this thing, you know, that no, this is not how it is done. There was encouragement, there was love, there was so much of warmth and kindness. And I think that somewhere went on to shape me as a person where I could take interest in people's lives and stories. And there came a time when whenever there were stories related to human emotions, I was asked to do, you know, like when we were unfortunately hit by the earthquake in 2001. My editor called me and said that, stories where you will talk to surviving parents, surviving partners, surviving children, I think those stories, why don't you do these stories? So very early on, I think in my life and career, I must have probably been just about 21, 22. And I was told that you do these stories. And then they found feeling in them. People could relate to them. So I feel that I have been able to do all this only because my parents were very, very good listeners. They encouraged, and both of them were like that. Both of them were very loving. So they could encourage. And yes, if I wanted to read or, they would take us out. So it was that protected childhood, which I think in my case, let me flourish and do well in life.
And in the book, Manjula ji talks about sort of growing up in a royal family as almost like a golden cage, which is, you had the luxuries, but you don't sort of, there's so many restrictions. Did you have that too growing up?
Yes, I mean, I remember once when I was in school and my friends, it had just become a common practice to sort of set out with friends, even at 8 in the night and all. So I was told, I mean, I knew, and I never questioned my parents. So I was a very obedient, I have been a very obedient child. I wouldn't question. And I think very early on, I understood that whatever parents are going to say is going to be right for you. So I went that way. So if I was told, of course, initially, sometimes you felt, when you are in college and all, there is a party. I remember once I was in this organization called ISEC. And it's a student organization. You might have heard of it. So, there were around 70, 80 people in that organization from Ahmedabad, which means that there would be 1 or 2 birthdays in a week. I remember once there must have been a week where there were 3 or 4 birthdays. So I must have gone for one. And then my father, maybe I spoke of the second or third, I don't know, but my father just told me, someone who wouldn't say no to anything, someone who was so loving, but he said that if you have 5 invitations, you must probably accept only 1. And then I was also told that girls from good families, I mean, I don't know how this is taken, but girls from good families, they are not out of the house till late night. So I just told that, my friends go out for just a drive at around 9. So I was told that, no, that doesn't happen in our family. So yeah, of course, what you wear when you went back home in the village, what you wore, I mean, you had to be careful and aware of what you were wearing and how you were talking and all of those things. Yes, it's very similar. And that is the reason why I could understand Manjula Pooja Shroff very well. Although, as I'm sure you'll bring it up, but her life story, I mean, she was in charge of her life and finances from such a young age. And mine has been the very reverse. I got married in my 30s. So I was really babied and cradled in my home by my family, my parents, my brother, sister, everything. It was very cozy. So that is very different. And I think one of the aspects that make this book writing challenging and also very interesting was that on the one hand, it was very easy to relate to everything that she said. And on the other hand, like, when she talks about her being a mother, or when she talks about her mother loving her, these were aspects, it didn't take me a minute to understand. And if I wrote something, when she read it, she felt that, it's exactly what she wanted to say. But then there were certain other things like, this Barsati, what she just mentioned, or going on your own suddenly and starting off a life in a new city. All that is foreign to me. So for me, it was very interesting to understand how it all came about. So yes, there were these two extremes, and yet, it was a lovely journey writing this book.
Wonderful. Manjula ji, give us some more context about your family.
Gigi. So, you're right that possibly the book doesn't delve into, or expects perhaps the reader to know what a palace life is. But I'll tell you, the general stereotype of a princess's life is घूंघट में रहते थे, घूंघट में रहते हैं. Even today, घूंघट में रहते हैं. And I'm not berating that in any way, but I'm telling you that the घूंघट itself is significant of a certain lifestyle. It is significant कि आप बड़ों के सामने आपकी viewpoint नहीं दे सकते हो. It is significant that the men in the household hold the reins. It is significant that I said it in the book that my mother was this beautiful porcelain doll who had no voice. And somewhere in the very beginning of my life, I told myself that I'm going to have a voice. So my mother I loved my mother to the moon and back, but she was like my reverse role model. She was who I was not going to be. Right? So what Anurita said is women in our homes never worked. But the reason I started to look after finances because I didn't have any adult. My dad was never around. My mother used to never keep well. My sister, older sister, was adopted to my nanny's home. I had a younger brother. I had no choice. Life simply grew me up. I just had to take the reins of finance. Because I'll tell you how it began. Because once my school asked me why my tuition fee wasn't paid. And I did not even know that you had to pay a fee to go to school. I mean, who knows that at grade 3? Then onwards, I took charge of not my tuition fee, even my brother's. Right? So what really happened is, your early life shapes you. My Nani, my grandmother's older sister, was this very, very stately. She herself was Rani Saab from a state of Atwalik in Orissa. She was this very stately, she was widowed at the age of 14. And she used to wear this white starched saris and that sharp nose, Aryan features. Never went to school. There is one particular incident that is like imprinted in my mind. And perhaps that's why I'm in education today. So, I remember being sitting in the back of a car in a school dress. And I thought my grandmother, who we call Didi, and she's talked about a lot in the book, is invincible. I've seen her do everything. And we were perhaps going somewhere and I could hear her talking with agitation. And I knew that something is not right because she herself is not in control of what is going to happen. And I, long and the short of it is we were going to some kacheri and she was very concerned that she was going to meet a magistrate and collector and she wasn't sure how it's going to go. And then I realized somewhere that she was saying that this is this hugely, collector is a very, very learned person. So I knew she was nervous about something. And I knew she had never been to school, in my little uniform in 3rd, 4th grade, I figured out that I'm in school and she's not, and she's going to meet this learned person and maybe the disadvantage is education. And, now imagine this thing, these chote darwaze hote hain, wooden doors that flap like this when you go to a government office. It's one of those things. And I'm standing at the back and there's the secretary and my grandmother who enter. And that is the moment that is imprinted in my mind. She enters and the collector stands up for her. And I knew right there that education did not matter. It is how you conducted your life, what you did with your life, how much understanding you had with your life, how your work spoke about it that mattered. In that moment, something totally just made me who I am. And that's why I hold Didi in such high esteem. That is one. And the other thing, when I came to Gujarat, my mother-in-law, Gujarat has this culture of jhula. Everybody in Gujarat, a lot of people here in Gujarat know jhula. My mother-in-law would be this jhula person who sat in the jhula and had command about everybody's life. And I used to wonder how. वो कहीं जाती नहीं थी बहुत ज़्यादा, but she just used to pretty much run everyone's lives. And that's where I realized that women have these, extra powers, call it emotional, call it decision-making, call it balance. And there are some women who actually shaped me, apart from, of course, the people that you read about, people that I've seen in my life that have shaped me because it's not, education is beyond, let's just say, beyond textbooks and classrooms. Education is about how you manage your life.
Right. Yeah. And when the two of you started work on this book, did it all go as planned or were there challenges that you had not anticipated?
Well, when we first met and decided that, yes, we are going to go ahead with this book, I knew that it should be about her life, because I felt that she has been somebody who's been very focused and dedicated in what she's done. She's got a fun-loving side to her. She, of course, then when you are running institutions and all of that, you've got to be strict as well. So I felt that it would make a nice, wholesome book. And in my interactions with her, or, whenever I met her, like, let's say I would meet her I may have seen her at some social gathering, and then I've seen her doing the garba, and I've seen that, she's been, like I said, fun loving. So I just felt that, okay, here looks somebody who's a happy person. And I personally prefer all my interactions and my work and all, I like to see and do it with people who have a happy, positive vibe. I mean, and it has been possible, except, when you're in a workplace, there may be one or two people here and there, but otherwise I prefer interacting and on a larger. So in that sense, I felt that, I knew where exactly and how exactly we want to head. We spoke about what all other different aspects of her life that we would like to talk about. So I knew that, she told me that she loves travels, and then there are so many other, her motherhood journey, her mother's journey, childhood, all of that again. So we discussed all that, I think, in the first 1 or 2 meetings itself. I formed the chapters. I always feel that that's the best way to work. Rather than gather all the material, it's better to know what are going to be the chapters. So the chapters were first formed, and then the filling in took place. So first the chapters were formed. It was decided that these are interesting chapters. This will make probably good reading for everyone. And then after thereon, I had questions for each of the chapters and each of the subject. And then we went ahead, and that's how it progressed from one to the other.
Got it.
And I'd say this. Pardon?
Yeah, go ahead. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
No, and I would say that this book has been, more of a pandemic product, if I can say, because it started just a few weeks before the pandemic, the whole idea. But then for 3, 4, 5 months, I think we were both lost. I mean, everybody was lost, right? Everybody was, those who are working, I mean, people like her who are in a commanding position and who have to look after a lot of people who are working with her. So she cannot just close the room and sit up and relax. But I had the privilege of doing that, honestly. So I, for 3, 4 months of the pandemic, was in my own world and was beginning to enjoy television or movies after 18 years. I don't watch television, but after 18 years, and my husband introduced me to these teleseries and all, some good ones. So I was doing all of that and eating a lot. And then one fine day, we again reconnected sometime in August, September 2020. And that's where it all started, that, yeah, I mean, this is something that could be done. And that's when it started. But the real work, again, I would say, began in end of 2020. That's when we actually sort of started back and forth and talking about it and stuff like that.
So I guess from your perspective, the unexpected thing was the pandemic, right? So that sort of,
so that sort of made us work on the project also, and it also sort of delayed it a bit, if I may say so. So that's why I say it's a pandemic product, because from start to finish, it happened all between these 2 years. Yeah.
And Manjula ji, did everything go according to plan for you? Or?
My part was less, right? I was to answer a few questions and then review for, dissonance, if any. And, I've been earlier written about too, and so I kept that objectivity. But when I was answering the questions, the predominant thought in my mind was, first, once like Anurita ji said, we let the whole conversation slide and then picked it up. So during that time, one of the things was, when you get written about, there's a lot of a side of you, the vulnerable side of you that comes out. You've got to deal with that. You've got to accept that before you start to talk with honesty, right? So somewhere I would have had to go through that process of saying that, okay, I'm now ready to talk about my vulnerable side. I was hoping that when I answered the questions she was sending out to me, I was answering from the person behind the persona. The persona is what people know about. And if I were to illustrate this to you, somebody, one of the 10th graders or 12th graders, I forget, a girl was asked the question that, who do you want to be or something, many years ago. And apparently she named a few other people, and they said that anybody from school, and she said that I would like to be Mrs. Shroff. And they said, why? And this was her answer. Her answer was, I want to be Mrs. Shroff because wherever Mrs. Shroff points, that job gets done. She's surrounded by people and she has to point a finger and the job gets done. This is what the 10th graders, or perhaps, and I know a lot of teachers are there in this room, a lot of Kalorexians are there here listening to this. This is perhaps who they think I am. Somebody who can so-called bark orders and the job is done. At 10th grade, when the girl is thinking that I can point a finger, at her age, when she was in the 10th grade, I was dealing with every adult, responsible adult in my life having been dead. By the time I was in my mid-20s, I did not know any surviving adult. I was all alone in this wide world, making a living for myself and a life for myself. I think that people who are in my organization need to know this. They need to know what it has taken for me to be who I am today. They need to know that despite all odds, I'm standing tall, not because I'm a superhuman, but because you have to let go in life. You have to just move on in life. And it may sound philosophical, but that's the way life is designed. And every time I would hear this statement about, I mean, she has a lot of authority, etc. I'm hoping that people are realizing that I could have been washed away in my 20s. I could have been doing drugs in my 20s. I had every reason. Today, if our children are doing drugs without any reason, you never have any good reason to do drugs. But if they are looking at me today, they also have to know how many hurdles I've crossed to be here. They have to know the human side of me. And I hope that that is what we tried to cover. And that is how I was trying to answer. I mean, I'm glad we're doing chats like this because it gives you an opportunity to really express yourself. Itna sab kuch book mein nahi kaha ja sakta. But yeah, this is what it has taken. I have come to so many breaking points, boiling points.
At this time, I would encourage the audience to have questions. If they have questions, to raise their hand and we can invite them. But I'm going to ask you a question, and I'm going to ask you another question. How would you respond to naysayers, both of you, who would argue that you are from a privileged background, everything was handed on the platter, so what's there to learn? How would you respond to that? Anurita ji and
Manjula? It has happened all the time with me as well, and it doesn't stop when I was not working. Even in office, I remember once there were times I have gone, probably one of the last ones to go and collect the salary. Even the person who hands out the salary has said, हाँ आपको तो जरूरत क्या है? And I have never understood why people say that. Is it because I have not shown urgency or because I have delayed the whole thing? I really don't understand, but that is one thing. Secondly, what did you just ask? I mean, have I answered it, or I'm sorry, I lost the thought.
So my question is, people might say, well, you are from a privileged background, right? There's a lot of critics who would argue that, so where's this, so you didn't have to struggle. Everything was given to you on a platter. People might say,
yes,
what would be your sort of response to that? Yeah.
Also at workspace, Vishal, I have seen that, people have said that feature writing is so easy. When I started off as a 20-year-old, I'd hate to say this actually, but yes, I mean, I say it openly also now, but those who did crime and those who did those were real serious stories, serious journalism. Whereas feature writing, when you're writing about somebody's life and you're writing only good stuff, even if it was not just good stuff all the time, but if you're writing about a person's life, it was almost as if, it was discarded. So I would say that for the first 10 years of my life in journalism, it is only when I joined a tabloid and where feature writing was really looked up to. And by that time, the world had changed. I'm talking of the last 10, 12 years, 14 years. By then, things had changed. But otherwise, when I had started off and I was with the Indian Express at the young age of 20, I remember there were a couple of people who thought that I could do good writing only after some pieces of mine appeared in the edit page. Timeline and all, there were those columns in the Indian Express. Until then, it was okay. Acha, Shubha Mudgal aayi hai, unko interview karna hai. Shah Rukh Khan ko interview. So it wasn't as if one was doing great stuff. Then going to good programs, whether it is music, theater, dance programs. Oh, your life is so amazing. You just have to go and visit all these nice places and then come and write about them. So what one thought that creativity that is required, that was not given and that was not counted. So it was almost as if, कि हाँ, मतलब अच्छा लिख लेती है, but इसमें तो क्या है? मतलब this is something that can happen. It's almost like, if you look good, इसमें what have you really done? It's the genes. So it was really like that. And I've faced it for a very long time in my life. In fact, even now, sometimes people will think, that acha likhna hi to hai, but nobody understands that sometimes, even to write one chapter, for example, and I'm glad that in this case that never came up. But otherwise, I'm sure that, there are people who would feel, oh, ye chapter hai, ye subject hai, bas itna hi to likhna hai. But sometimes a chapter can get over in 2 sittings. Sometimes it can take 10, right? You would know that. So these things about creativity and how to put it across in the right way, that doesn't happen all the time very easily. If it comes to you, it comes to you. And if you begin writing, so I'm like that, yes. If it comes to me, it comes to me immediately. Otherwise, there could be a couple of days where I won't say the writer's block, but you don't feel like writing, even though the subject is very interesting. So that happens, yeah. People feel, oh, you get it a little easy when you have to write this kind of nice, interesting, good journalism.
Manjula ji, do you get that too? How do you respond to that?
Nothing has been easy. I never got anything on a platter. I worked very, very, very hard. There are days I have worked literally 22 hours. The Delhi Public School that I started, I almost never got because I was too young. Nobody took me seriously in Delhi. And I've spoken about this earlier. Because I used to wear trousers, I switched to wearing saris and started wearing chashma to appear older. I never got bank loans because education as a sector was not treated as an organized sector when I started out. I was really never taken seriously in most of the things that I asked for. So when I got started, my husband helped me with finances. So no, that was not easy. To be a woman leader, I want to tell you this, that you're leading principals who have 20 years of experience. You're a fresher. Just because you're sitting in a chair, nobody's going to respect you. You've got to earn the respect. Today, if I'm leading people who are legal people, who are finance people, who are media people, who are infrastructure people, civil engineers, they're not going to listen to me because I'm occupying some chair. I better understand the task and be better at it. It takes me a lot. I learn and relearn every day. When I was running the Delhi Public School, I was a very young mother. I have worked till 2 weeks of my pregnancy. And within 2 months, with a baby in my arm, I have started to work. There were no paternity leaves at the time. There were no...
Well, and there's no maternity leave for an entrepreneur anyway, right?
Exactly. There is no holiday anyway for an entrepreneur. And you as a professor of entrepreneur, you understand the inherent risks which are external as well as the inherent risks that are internal to an entrepreneur. You know the psyche of an entrepreneur. We are workaholics. And that's how you sustain yourself as an entrepreneur. So no, I've never got anything on a platter. Not that I've regretted it. But if anybody thinks that she comes from a privileged background and that's why life has been easy, if anything, life has been extremely hard.
Wonderful. I think we have a question from the audience. So Navisha, do you have a question? Is there a question?
When did you start writing books?
When did you start writing books?
Oh, I started writing a published book, a nationally published book was, the first one was 4 years ago, 5 years ago.
So you've been writing books for about 5 years now?
Yes, I've been doing, so under the Stories and Stories, I've done a few books, which is, personalized books, but published books, yeah. I mean, I wrote one, which was co-authored with another friend, that was 4 years ago. And then this one. And yeah, I mean, hopefully very soon something else.
And what's been the challenge, biggest challenge in writing books?
I won't say there's been no, I don't think there's been a challenge, because like I said, I don't do anything until I really enjoy it. So because I enjoy, I won't call it a challenge, but yes, it consumes me. So for some time, like I've said it openly, that when I was doing this book on Manjula Pooja Shroff, it was almost, my life was very similar, I felt, to an actor who has to enact somebody's role in a film. I really felt, so if she would tell me something about her life, I would just begin to feel that way. That, okay, if I was, and if bhi chala gaya, after a while, she's saying it and I'm thinking, okay, this is what could have been done next. And many a times that is how it was, which is why I say that, writing this book there were no tough times where I said something, she disagreed, she said something, I disagreed. That's primarily because of this, because I started living the role and understanding everything. She's talking about entrepreneurship. So I started to imagine what it would be like, like she just said, to work with a child and the school is building and all. So I started to imagine that with my daughter, who was born 7 years ago. So I started to imagine a few situations like that where I have gone out with her. So everywhere I would relate. And when I relate to something, I feel you're able to do it well. So that is how it was. Okay. So it was a fun challenge.
In the interest of time, let's do the next few questions, sort of rapid fire, because we are committed to 1 hour and we are at the mark. So for both of you in your field as a writer and as an entrepreneur, who inspires you? Like, are there writers or entrepreneurs?
I would say that, I don't have any one particular person who I really like, but I love reading books on people's lives. I love reading biographies, autobiographies. I love reading about philosophy. I love reading poems, but I like and can relate to, and I mean, I enjoy reading what Dalai Lama has to say. I really like a few things that he has said. For example, once when I had met him, he had said that I could be extremely angry and irritated with a particular person. But when if I'm asked to walk with the same person 15 minutes hence, I don't keep it in my heart. So things like these, which you read or you hear from the people, from the authors, writers themselves, I think these are very encouraging. And so I like reading books on these. I like reading books on spirituality. I like reading books on consciousness. And generally anything to do with English language. I love, in India, when you talk of Indian authors, I think it's been very interesting to read so many books actually at MA level. So there are really no names, but I love reading all kinds of books which have subjects like these.
So before we go to Manjula ji, Anurita ji, let me ask you this. 1 or 2 books that you're reading these days, 1 or 2 biographies, good ones that you're reading these days?
I have not been reading anything for the last 1 month. So I'm not really reading anything currently, but I'm reading up a lot of essays and things like those. So different essays I get from certain friends, and also I read those. And those are the things that I'm with, and also beginning to write on another book that I'm working on. So therefore not reading something.
Okay. Manjula ji, any successful entrepreneurs who inspire you?
I've learned a lot from the biography of Dhirubhai Ambani. I've really learned a lot. One of the things that has just stayed with me is he says it's not important how you fall, because you're bound to fall. It's important how quickly you get up. And he's used this example of the MCB trip, when the power trips. It's about how quickly you get the power back. Amish Tripathi's trilogy, I read and reread. So yeah, I do a lot of self-management books. So management, self-management, spirituality, biographies. I mean, I kind of rotate these are the kind of genres that I read.
And what book are you reading these days, if any?
I'll tell you, I am reading Success Mantras and Musings. I have never read that. I have to quite honestly tell you, because we are doing city-wise releases, I have never read any book as many times as I've read this book. I find myself reading this in the flight, every now and then reading and referring to it. So this is the book that I'm currently reading, Success Mantras and Musings, Entrepreneur, Edipreneur Manjula Pooja Shroff by Anurita Rathore Jadeja.
Actually, yeah, if I could add, sorry, but yes, there's so many, so many things related to the book that keep coming. So yeah, that's there. And yeah, I forgot to mention, more than a month or two ago, I was reading Saurav Ganguly's autobiography, and I think that was very interesting. Some parts of it are very interesting and inspiring both.
Wonderful.
The last book I read. Yeah.
And Anurita ji, you mentioned the next book. So what is the topic of the next book you're working on?
So there are two actually I'm doing, and one of them is more to do with a parent and a child, or rather both parents and child. So it's not a fiction, and it's non-fiction. It's a non-fiction book, but it's something to do with the relationship and between parents and children, but trying to give it a very interesting way of putting across the message. So that is what I'm working on. And again, it of course, like they say, things are autobiographical. So somewhere one is able to relate to one's journey. And if you feel that, yes, these are things that worked for me, or these are things that have been fine. I mean, you don't have to be a very pushy parent. Things take shape if they have to, with a little bit, of course, you have to be dedicated, you have to be having a firm resolve. So it's going to be based around that. I'm still figuring out how. And then there's another one which I began writing. So it's a typical, unusual, it's about an arranged match where it turns into a runaway marriage, an arranged marriage, so to say, turning into a runaway marriage. So it's, again, I think something interesting and offbeat. So let's see which I'm going to be able to take further faster.
And is it autobiographical?
Again, there are going to be some elements for sure, because it's a very unusual story. I mean, even my story is my husband and me, the way we met, we were sort of fated to meet 3-4 times in life. There were situations that we could have met, but we did not. And then when we finally did, maybe in that part of a decade, and then we met, and then, yeah, so there might be autobiographical elements, interesting ones, but yes.
Manjula ji, what's the next stage of your entrepreneurial journey? There's a lot of people from your school family here. So what's the next stage?
I think they already know that, but I'm going to say it at the cost of repetition. So one of the things that I think has stood me in good stead in my life, despite all of its challenges, is that I have a very strong inner voice. And I believe that everybody born on earth has a very strong inner voice. But somewhere along the way, as we deal with life, we either forget about the inner voice or push it away every time it tries to talk to us. And I've been trying, of course, I'm very connected to my inner voice. I've been trying to, I have a digital channel called Shroffism, through which I am almost insisting on all Kalorexians, which is whether it's students, faculty, or parents, to start to focus on a 360 dimension of life. We cannot lead a slither of life. We can't lead one pie of the pizza. We human beings are the most coveted life on earth of existence. And if we don't realize the potential of a human being, then it's just because we're not paying attention to it. So I am paying a lot of attention to that part of, empowering people to look at 360-degree dimensions, focus within, because everything that we're chasing externally is all within us.
Okay. On that note, I guess my last question to the both of you is, what advice would you give young people who want to pursue or succeed in the career that you choose, as an author for Anurita ji, as an entrepreneur for Manjula? Any advice or suggestions for young people?
I feel that, one of the most important things is that one should make that your profession that you really like to do or you do well. because then you won't realize that it is work. I haven't realized, honestly, that it's been over 2 decades that I have been writing, because every time, there was a time I used to tell my mom when I was around 29, 30, that I feel that I'm writing articles and all of that. I mean, you get a salary when you're working in a newspaper or a magazine, you get a salary. I used to feel that I'm getting it for free because I loved my work so much. And because there was no need for me, I was not running the home or anything, right? So that is how I felt. Because I love it so much, I feel that this is what my life is shaping into. So but yes, if one is going to particularly be looking at becoming an author, I think you have to be very intensely interested in your subject. Whatever area you like, you should take up writing in that area. So if you really like economics, you should become a writer who does stories on that. You love finance and sports, you should take up stories that would consume you there. I like people, I like stories on emotions and love and all of that. I could luckily take up that and do stories on that. So therefore, one should know exactly, there should be clarity in mind what you really like. And when you have that, you are able to take yourself to making that your career, and then you are able to do well.
And Anurita ji, you probably know that is part of Steve Jobs' famous Stanford speech, where he says, if you want to have a good career, find something that you love and pursue that.
A lot of people have said it. In fact, even Prahlad Kakar said the same thing to me. One long back when I had interviewed him for Chicken Soup for the Teenage Soul series, he had said the same thing. And in my case, I think, yeah, it happened the same way. So I think a lot of people in the world who have been able to be happy people in their workplace or have been able to do well, it's because they have been able to pursue what they really loved. So I also encourage, there are people I come across who after college realize that this is not what they wanted to do. And sometimes they have the pressure of parents, but I feel that they should take the plunge, even if there's nothing like wasting 3-4 years. It's okay. I mean, in the long scheme of life, it's really fine if you put those 2-3 years, because something from those 2-3 years is going to be able to pull you through in your future years, maybe. So it's always good to take that pause and reflect. Yes, you're enjoying it, then one should march ahead.
Wonderful. Manjula ji?
It is our today determines our tomorrow. It is what we do with what we have today that's going to show the path for tomorrow. And life will happen to us when it happens to us. My one word advice, if I may, would be, it's important to know today what to let go and what to hold on to. It's that fine thinking that's going to determine a lot of things. I've seen people hold on to the wrong things. When we hold on to our past, we're holding on to the wrong things. So letting go let go of the past for the future to come in. We need to clean our slate today. We need to live for the moment. The whole philosophy depends on this very thing. Live for the now. You take care of your present and the future will take care of itself. Easier said than done. And it's not about, when I'm in my 30s, I'll do all of this. No, whether you're 16, whether you're 18, 20, you've got to handle your today for your tomorrow to be more secure. So it's not like I'm waiting to grow up and then I'm going to do it. No. So that's my biggest piece of, takeaway will be learn what to let go and learn what to hold on to. And of course,
does that come naturally to you, or do you sort of have to work on it?
I may have worked on it in my 20s, but today it's like my second nature. It comes very, very natural to me.
Okay.
And the last chapter of the book is written the way it is for this very reason. It was so easy to write it so simply. As a professor, Vishalji, you know this. Unless you've got the theory sorted, you cannot simplify it. Anybody who's able to simplify such a complex theory of living in the present has had to walk that path.
Yeah.
You cannot say it otherwise. So I literally have walked that path. And by now, a lot of my coaching, a lot of my mentoring is in that, because it is important for human beings to find their purpose. I know that we are all careerists, and I'm a hardcore careerist, but that's not the end of Manjula Pooja Shroff. That's only one dimension. So
See, what I enjoyed about the both of you is you love your career. You call yourself workaholic or careerist, but you also seem to enjoy family and sort of the other side of life. So it's not sort of the, just focus on the career, forget everything else. It's like enjoy both. And that I enjoyed hearing about that. So yeah. So on that note, thank you very much. Thank you for the book, which I enjoyed reading very much. I hope our paths cross someday in person and I get to meet you both. And thank you for taking the time. I know we went over time today, but thank you.
Thank you so much. It was so wonderful talking to you.
Vishalji, let me also register my thanks for Renuji, who introduced us. Vishalji, thank you so much for taking the time. Thank you for thinking the book is worth your time to read and to talk to both of us. And the audience, thank you so much for being here. I know you hear us so much. You've been following the book. This book cannot be a success without you reading it and learning from it. So please go ahead and read. And please write to me on Facebook or Insta. Please, guys.
Yes, on that note, please also write to me if you have any interesting comments about the book, any good, bad, whatever, just write. I would love to hear too. So thank you and bye-bye.
Thank you. Thank you so much, everyone. Thank you.